Welcome to everyone who's just joined us. If you just joined us, feel free to leave your name and which city you're from and your favorite mode of transport within a city in the chat box. It's 2:30 and let's start the session. Hello and a happy evening, everyone. I'm Suvita Lakshmi Narayan, Associate Visual Communications at the Institute of Transportation and Development Policy. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here today, senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, and all other stakeholders who have connected to this session on YouTube as well. Welcome to the second online workshop of the stage 2 of the India Cycles for Change and Streets for People Challenge. We are also joined by our season 2 cities who have commenced their journey towards a walking and cycling revolution across the country. As we begin this session, feel free to use the chat box to let us know your name, which city you're from, and which is your favorite mode of transportation. People have already started doing that, so we're very interested in learning all of the fun answers you have to share with us. Let's take a quick look at the agenda for the day. We will start with an opening remark from Mr. Kunal Kumar, Director, Smart City Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Next, we will have a knowledge sharing session with representatives from Pune and Bangalore, who will be sharing their experience on preparing the walking and cycling network plan in their cities and on their scale-up plans. Following that, we will have the technical presentation by the ITTP India team that will take cities through the process of creating a walking and cycling network plan, followed by the steps cities can take towards the upcoming World Bicycle Day. We will then take questions to address any queries from all of you. We will close the session with some encouraging words by the ITTP India team. Also, we have some exciting new tools to engage with all of you. So stay tuned for some interactive polls and quizzes throughout the workshop. Before we start today's session, I would like to highlight a few housekeeping rules for everyone here. Participants and panelists, feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the session. Please address the chat to panelists and attendees. Take your questions, however, in the Q&A box. Our team will shortlist these questions for the Q&A session. And finally, if you like a question, you can also upvote it so that our team will bring it to our attention. For the quiz, you will need your phones or a laptop to access a web page. We will give you a heads up before the quiz so you can get ready. To start, I'd like to invite Mr. Kunal Kapoor, Director, Smart City Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, to share a few words for inspiration and kickstart our workshop today.
Thank you. This is Rahul Kapoor, Director. Yeah. Okay. So, of course, first of all, welcome to all the smart cities. and the cities that qualified as part of the stage 2 or the season 1, and also the cities who have joined us today, who are very keen to kickstart the streets and cycling revolution in their cities as part of the season 2. So welcome to the second workshop for Stage 2 cities of the India Cycles for Change at Streets for People Challenge. All of you must have visited, or most of you must have visited Surat and must have seen the kind of work that was done there by the teams with regard to the placemaking that was created. And I think that gave all of us a lot of joy to see that how we can actually feel what a city should be like, a city which is built for people and not just the buildings. So I think that was quite a learning and takeaway that we took back with us when we came back. And that's what we would want to do here as cities, as smart cities, to replicate those kind of workable models that allow all of us to get more connected to the communities, to get more connected to the people. And I think the initiatives that have been undertaken under these various challenges of the ministry, be it the Streets for People, be it Cycles for Change, be it the Nurturing Neighborhood or the Eat Smart Cities Challenge, I think all of them have one single objective, and that is basically building cities for people and connecting with them. So the joy that we all got from the various tactical interventions that we undertook as part of ACAM 75 interventions, or the more permanent interventions that some of you must have made. The whole idea is to make these things more sustainable. And as we have also set out to achieve the 2023 goals for healthy streets and healthy cities, just to see the kind of progress that we have made since this challenge was announced, and we've got like today more 120 plus kilometers of streets which are currently under execution. We have 14 cities that have already started street design consultancies, have been onboarded for them, and with more than 930 plus kilometers of streets that are expected to be transformed by 2023. I think we are all trying our best to reach and achieve these goals that we have set for ourselves. And the whole thing is, the real reward would be the joy that the citizens of the city would get once we complete this. And the joy that we got when we were in Surat, or when we did all these ECAM certified interventions in our cities, I think that's what we are really looking for. So let's think of ways in making these initiatives more permanent in nature. So for that, we of course need to have a very comprehensive strategy or a roadmap on how we are going to do this, how we can have a comprehensive plan for walking and cycling. So try and build a comprehensive walking and cycling plan for your cities. It will also help you identify what is the quantum of work or the effort that would be required to actually achieve these healthy street and healthy cities goals. You'd be able to plan your finances in a better way. Also think of ways on how you can leverage funds or finances from within the government, from outside the government, to meet these objectives and implement those plans that you would have set for yourselves. And of course, these would just be the first steps so that all these interventions become more permanent in nature. One more thing, of course, we are also going to celebrate the World Bicycles Day on 3rd of June. A reason for all the cities that have been participating, not only the stage 2 cities, but also the other winners, to do something in their cities as a mission. From mission to movement, if we are thinking of being the lighthouses for 4,800, I mean, just imagine the kind of responsibilities these each 100 cities have. So like 48 cities, if you just do the maths, I mean, 4,800 and 100 smart cities. So probably for every city, you have 48 cities that are looking up to you. And if they are looking up to you, then probably show them the way forward by doing these things in the right spirit, in the right earnest, and see the happiness that you will get when others look up to you as mentors, as role models, and implement the same kind of initiatives in their cities. So as we approach the World Bicycles Day, try and organize cycle rallies or some kind of an event. Think of something that you can make a permanent intervention in your city. Think of ways that you can improve the whole streets and the way they are designed in cities today. Try and converge with other programs, be it the Transport for All, be it the Eat Smart Cities or the Nurturing Neighborhood initiatives that have been undertaken, and build all those components into your overall plan and scheme of things. So one more development is the leadership board that the team has created. So you'll be able to see that where you stand with regard to your peers. Some of you do have that competitive spirit very well imbibed into you. So I think this would be a great way to start just having a look at how you have performed. And it's also a good self-assessment tool to understand that where we have reached with regard to the goals that we have set for ourselves. So for the Healthy Streets, Healthy Cities initiatives, of course, this portal will be very helpful. So we would be launching the running portal very soon. You can get an overview of the overall progress that you're making towards all these interventions. So of course, we are all part of this journey together. There's a whole community that we are trying to build as part of this challenge. So just remember this, you don't. There are a number of people who are already there with you in this journey. It is only a platform that we have built that is allowing all of us to come together, sit together, listen to each other together, and take this forward. I think rather than me saying it, I would like to be at the listening end. And events like what we did in Surat and the kind of cases that cities presented during that event, I think it was a wonderful learning for all of us. So we would like all of you to build these new use cases and insights, and let others study your case studies of how you have led to healthy streets and healthy people in your city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul Kapoor, sir, for those inspiring words and setting the right tone for this workshop today. Next, I'd like to invite Smritika Srinivasan, Associate Urban Development at ITTP India, to give us an update on the progress so far.
Thank you, Suvi. So let's just look at the progress so far in both the challenges. All the cities here present in this workshop have been taking tremendous efforts to ensure that they're working towards these goals. So let's look at what happened after the workshop 1, and let's see the progress so far. So in January, we had a nationwide storm of the Freedom to Walk and Cycle Challenge. We clocked in over 12 lakhs kilometers of walking, cycling, and running between 1st and 26th January. Not only that, we also saw city leaders taking a strong commitment towards making long-term infrastructure and ensuring institutional resilience and building support for campaigns. And they did this by signing the Freedom to Walk and Cycle pledges. So far, we have over 20 cities who've signed this pledge, and we're just hoping that many more cities get on board and make these strong commitments as well. So after January, in February, we started looking at how some of these commitments can be looked at as national level goals. And that's where we have the Foundation Action and Communications 2023 goals. The 2023 goals intends to create healthy streets and healthy cities by taking up various goals and milestones and achieving it through the challenges itself. So we launched this in February, and following that in March, we started hosting one-on-one discussions with cities to understand their progress towards 2023 goals. So in these discussions, we found out that over 820 kilometers are currently under execution for street design works. And also there are over 930 kilometers being planned for 2023. So this level of data is pretty large, and we're just hoping that many more cities add on to this, and we can create like a huge countrywide network of healthy streets in our cities. So in addition to that, we also have around 14 cities who've been working with consultants to get these works done on the ground. So congratulations to all these cities who've been initiating work towards the 2023 goals. We are excited to scale up these works and start working on network plans so that all of our walking and cycling friendly interventions come together. So over to Suvi so that we can kickstart the next leg of the session.
Thank you, Smritika. It's great to see the amazing progress towards the challenge goals that all of our cities have made, and we hope our cities aim even higher. Now let's move on to the most awaited part of our workshop, the knowledge sharing session. Today we have with us Mr. Prasanna Desai, architect, urban designer, and director at PVP College of Architecture from Pune, to talk about Pune's city-level bicycle network plan. Joining him will be Ms. Sobia Rafiq, co-founder Sensing Local, from Bangalore to speak about the neighborhood network plan. I'd like to invite Parin, Parin, Deputy Manager, Inclusive Compact Cities at ITDP India, to moderate the panel discussion. Panelists, please stick to the presentation time of 10 minutes. Parin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Subheta. So before I begin with the session, often my friends, family members have often made this comment saying that when we visit this particular city, it's so well connected. You know what, when I'm in Delhi, I can move from one part of the city to other part of the city seamlessly using a metro. Or a very recently, a friend said, as he's working in Mumbai, that Mumbai is such a well-connected city. I can move from one part of the other part of the city using local trains. And you know what? It doesn't stop there. Once I'm out of the local train, there is a bus waiting for me to take me to my office. So overall, what both of them are essentially saying is about networks. So when a city has a network, it enables connectivity, it enables continuous movement. And this is what we hear cities across the globe talking about, so many kilometers of systems that they are building that will ensure a good connectivity. Now, similar to this modes, walking and cycling is no separate. Walking and cycling also needs their network, a network which is not just about moving one place to another, but many, many other details which ensures what pedestrians and cyclists needs. And a very critical component of this network will encourage more and more walking and cycling, and it has many, many benefits, like a lot of short trips, and in fact, many long trips can also be supported with walking and cycling. And this can essentially help cities towards managing their congestion, parking issues, and in fact, give citizens a reason for them to maintain their health and also environment. So without taking much time, I'm so glad to have Prasanna Desai and Sobia Rafiq to share their insights from Pune and Bengaluru respectively on their experience of developing walking and cycling network plans. So without much delay, I'll first invite Prasanna Desai sir to share his presentation. I would request both Prasanna sir and Sobia to stick to 10-minute presentation so we can have time for interaction, and also cities could ask question to you. So over to you, sir. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Parin. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Rahul Kapoor sir, for this session and making a very interesting and very simple opening statement. You have given me 10 minutes, but cycle is a very slow vehicle, you know. So it doesn't cover too much of a journey in 10 minutes at all, you know. It takes longer time. So I hope you will realize that. Anyway, that is just a passing remark. And straight away, let me get on to my presentation. It is obviously a little lengthy, but I will go fast and then maybe we can cover up many points later. Having said that, this is Pune Bicycle Plan, which was initiated almost 7-8 years ago. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible? Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. Okay. So this was a joint work that we had done between iTrans. iTrans is a Delhi-based company which was headed by Dr. Anvita Arora, who is an architect and transport planner, CE Center for Environment Education, and Pune Center with Sanskriti Menon and Prasanna Desai. So it was a consortium with which we were working on this. And I will run through these slides at a fast note. As I said, cycle-friendly environment. And this is the way we know about the city. So I don't think I'm going to talk about why we need cycles, but this is the kind of a graph that Pune's vehicles have been rising over a period of time. And there have been some examples which were there when BRTS was done right in the beginning. You can see the top two images. These are the first pilot BRTS in Pune, which we had executed. And you can see the cyclist literally on the design bicycle track. So we may talk about it later. And after that, a lot of other cycle sharing initiatives. And the bottom one is the latest work in Aund and JM Road. So I will skip all these statements, and then this also sets the ball rolling to tell us that what cycle can do in terms of what car occupies on the street. And that's the way our cities are. So just to put this in perspective, and that is where how do we really solve the traffic problem is the question, pollution problem, congestion problem. So these are the images. Pune records highest number of two-wheelers. All of us know this. And 35 lakh population in Pune and 36 lakh vehicles in Pune. Not a very good sign, you know. And why should Mumbai get over the opposition of cars? That's also, despite having had local trains and all, these are all the situations. This is Jaipur. And these are all of our old cities. The left-hand side shows the old times, good old times, and the current situation. And that is what the transfer. This is Pune station, once upon a time, and what is it currently today. So comprehensive mobility plan was a very important document in Pune, which was there. And it was implemented very, very partially. And that's where one thought the need of the Pune bicycle plan to get into non-motorized. And that's how it was conceived. And it was allotted. So when the comprehensive mobility plan was done, these are the 8 of the points which were part of the comprehensive mobility plan. I'm not reading through them, but the last one, the 8 flyover and bridges, was implemented with a lot of focus, one must say, and it was supposed to be the temporary measure, where all other 7 were at a very slow pace, you know. Then Pune bicycle plan, when we came up, there was certain format with which we were supposed to take care of this. I will not go into the companies, but what we did, the vision was for 8 to 80-year-old, and this is what that we should be able to get back to. And these were the basic focus areas. What we are looking at is that whether we can convert the short trips, which are the simplest one, the 4th one down there, safe behavior. So if I start from reverse, safety was the top priority, short trips, then long trips, and then retain the cyclists who are already there, and current future cyclists, whether we can convert the cyclists. I always say 11 number bus is the best bus, that is walking and cycling. And this can help connect communities. And if we are able to take care of this, this is a slide which many of you must have seen, which comes from our office. All these, we are able to do what is said on the top. We will be able to take up the property values. We will be able to take up safety. We will be able to have social interaction and health, and also reduce on pollution and fuel consumption. Now, short trip is, we all know what are the short trips. So one idea over here is always to have the short trips in its place, and we keep on connecting the short trips which can become and cover the whole city. I will show you what we are talking about. So this is all the short trips that are. Now this is the circle that we are talking about. So 2.5 kilometer dia. If we keep on putting all around the city, and if we keep on connecting these 2.5 kilometers, we can get a complete network of the city. To start at a complete city level at times may not be very easy. So this is what one was trying to look at when we are doing the bicycle plan. And this was 2 to 10 kilometers, then 10 to 30 kilometers, and 30 to 50 kilometers. That's the way we look at mobility in a city. So the first 2 kilometers should be very, very easy, and we should be able to achieve. And when we build up the earlier slide that you see, these circles, the whole city also gets connected. The project was divided in project analysis, survey, proposal, design phase, development phase, and execution phase. So this was the complete stages that we are doing. And I don't have the time to go in deeper into it, but we'll pause on key situations. So creation of cycle track network, cycle safe streets, bicycle parking facilities, integration with public transport, awareness and education campaigns, awareness and promoting, and all this over here. CE was involved that we are discussing bicycle plan. It was very important at ward level 3 times. So when we made the initial plan, we went to the ward, in the ward office, got the ward officers involved, got the politicians involved, and took their input. Then we improvised the bicycle plan and again went to the ward. So it was not that we prepared the plan and then we went to them. While the plan was under preparation, that is the time we took the plan to the ward offices and the politicians too. So data collection was the first stage. So this is all the data of DC rules and what has been already done was collected. So various forms, I will not again go into the details. This is all the data that we collected. What did the bylaws say? So what I'm trying to say is that this was not a short project. This ran for almost 2 years before we came with the bicycle plan for Pune. So all this data was collected, first stage of data. Then street mapping. Now this was very critical. We divided the city into various zones and we mapped the city. So you can see that these are the arterials which we aligned, 12 of them. And then we mapped this, we mapped zone-wise, each and every road. And each and every road was mapped as to whether it has a bicycle track, whether it has a dedicated bicycle track, whether it has a painted bicycle track, which of the bicycle tracks can be used. And this was mapped on left-hand side and right-hand side. This I must be very specifically talking because it is not only mapping the street, mapping the LHS and RHS. We also did these land use destination mapping, street assessment surveys. All these surveys were carried out by CE, Center for Environment Education. And we came out with these dots and nodes and streets. So a very intense exercise. We are trying to look at colleges, government buildings, schools, recreational spaces, markets, public building. All the land use of the city was studied. And this kind of a mapping which was put in. So this is the mapping through Google. Where are the destinations where people like to go? Now this is schools in Pune which were mapped, bus stands in Pune, railway stations, ward offices, post offices, RTO offices. So all these were mapped, Jilla Parishad offices, telephone exchanges, banks in Pune, restaurants in Pune. You can see the dots over there. So the idea is not really to travel maybe 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers on a bicycle to a restaurant, but within the wards you can travel to your restaurant. So density of restaurants you can see. So the evening, if I'm going to the restaurant, can I cycle and go to the restaurant rather than taking out my car? So it starts at the school level and ends maybe at the restaurant for the generation which is younger and wants to do this. Gardens in Pune, slums in Pune.
So
IT
please wrap it up.
I have 8 minutes, yeah. So this is how it is, the street mapping, existing cycle tracks. You can see the mapping there, some of the road mobility. I will run through. So you can see the red, which are the maps, the cycle tracks which were mapped. And run through this. So this is the kind of a mapping, zone-wise exactly mapping, which can be used, which cannot be used. This is an interesting one, red, orange, green analysis. Red is a cycle track which is there, which cannot be used or it doesn't have it. Orange is which can be partially rectified and the green is which can be used. So this mapping was carried out all throughout the 44 kilometers, which was claimed that it has cycle tracks. So this is a detailed mapping which happened. You can see the red, orange, green. You can see very little green. Mostly it is orange and red. And left-hand side, right-hand side, as I mentioned. And then the condition was also mapped that though there is a cycle track, we cannot cycle on it. And this is what emerged. You can see the red, orange, and the green. Green is very little. Traffic volume counts. So I will run through this traffic volume counts, not waiting for much, and come to what we recommended broadly. Cyclists, all these data of how much cyclists, how much captive cyclists, why theek ani changle in Marathi. So we could present to the corporators in the general body. And that is what the behavioral pattern of the cyclist was. Running through this green. We also planned a green route, that is green route through the Nala, through the river. So which could be not really destination oriented, but connecting the greens. And these were the green routes of the city. Existing bus transit routes, trying to connect bus with the cycle. So trying to understand the bus routes. And then we had these 3 basic recommendations. One was, the bottom one we will set, shared streets, where you have streets where you can put in safety by calming measures and reduce the speed of the MB. The middle one that you see is cycle painted cycle tracks, where cycle tracks are painted, but they are part of the carriageway. This was to 12 meters to 24 meters. But the top one that you see, where we have 24 meters plus, where we will then recommend physical segregation of the cycle track on the arterial roads so that you are safe because vehicles are at a high speed. So these were the 3 broad recommendations. And these are some proposals on various streets. These are obviously renders, existing road above and proposed. And this is almost at the end. And this was the network which finally was proposed. These are the certain meetings. These are the cycle plan group. These are the public meetings. And that is the final outcome which came in. Just 2 minutes or 1 minute more. So I will show you how this greenways were planned, Old Canal Bridge. So renders in the press. This is what the reaction. I will not again read through this. Many positive, some skeptical reports that whether it will really happen. So this is all that was happening. Varanasi to get cycle lessons from Pune soon. And this was the final launching of the cycle plan at JM Road. Now, just few executed images. You can see these images which are executed. This is in PCMC, painted cycle track. And now these are no renders. This is where people are using these, You can see this. You can see this, that the edge of the street is safe enough for people to use. The left-hand side is obviously a toddler, which we hope will get into the bicycle in years to come. So this is a dedicated cycle track recently executed at PCMC. You can see the dedicated cycle track on the right, the pedestrian walkway, and then a leisure space, and then a large garden. This is on a BRTS route. Right-hand side, you can see the BRTS. So BRTS, 9 meters, parking, cycle track, walkway, and then a recreation. So this is what is happening. This is almost 4 kilometers continuous cycle track, which is dedicated, executed under Smart City Mission.
So could you please wrap up?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's fantastic to see Pune taking a lead towards having a city-wide bicycle network plan. And here, the city is not talking about 50, 100 kilometers, but as far as I remember from the network plan, they have aimed for 850 plus kilometers of street. And this is a fantastic plan to have, and we could already see the implementation of it. Now, as we see the citywide plan, it's so important, and all of us talk about last mile connectivity. And this is where the neighborhood skill becomes also equally important for us to reach to our home. And for this, I request Sobia Rafiq to present her experience of developing neighborhood plans in 2 neighborhoods in Bengaluru. Over to you, Sobia.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us to even share our experience. So I love the presentation and that Prasanna sir actually showed, and it's amazing because when the city has a larger plan, it's so much easier for local level action to then step up. And our experiment of 2 neighborhoods in Bangalore was towards assessing if we can do or make neighborhoods more walkable, if we can make them more cyclable, and do the first and last mile connectivity to public transport itself. So the way I will be also sharing this presentation is to just sort of draw out what is a large principle, what we did for both these aspects. So it is not only walking or cycling specific, but the example I've taken is walking specific just for ease of understanding. So we actually followed a 5-step process, which was also a learning for us. What we did is the first step that we actually took is we identified a priority network. So if you look at a road network in a typical ward in Bangalore, it can range anywhere between 30 to 40 kilometers to even go up to around 80 kilometers in our larger wards that are there. The identification of priority network was to use some of I think which was also used in the master plan, which is to use certain elements of data to be able to say, okay, which network is actually going to be used most for walking. The auditing was done, this is the part, the auditing and assessing user demand was done completely with citizens. Because it was both these projects were neighborhood-led projects, we used them to audit the network itself, see what are the issues and the gaps, and we sort of tried to assess where is there an existing demand and which of the trips that are there that can be converted. We then moved into, because we know at the ward scale budgets are always limited, so we said let's actually put a pilot route together which we can show immediate impact with. So this is an even smaller network from the priority network, which we wanted to make walkable or cycle friendly. And finally, where do we get the budget to do this? Because these projects did not have budgets allocated to them when we started off, but then we moved towards getting public budgets allocated to it. So this is the image you see on the right hand side is Malleshwaram. It's a quaint old neighborhood in Bangalore. It was planned after a long time. The plan itself is a very nice grid system that is there. So it's one of the planned neighborhoods that is there. So the first step that we did, so you see here in this image, is we identified a road network. We used space syntax, which was to help analyze integration and choice of a network. We looked at land use, we looked at neighborhood amenities, and we looked at street measurements. So footpath width was very important, which did not exist in Bangalore, does not exist as a database. So we had to do primary data collection for this part. So what you're seeing on the right hand side is the blue part of it, which we took up actually as our pilot route. The dark red became the larger walking network that we prioritized of the entire thing. And the light red is the rest of the roads that we are not taking up. So what you see here is all the different data sets, and I won't get into the depths of it, but it is land use, road hierarchy, major, minor, intermediate roads is a classification we have here, key destinations, footpaths, the ones that had 1.8. So you'll see that the ones that pop out are actually, which are green, are the ones which in this case were the conservancy lanes that we reclaimed, which were really 4.5 meter wide, but unused, largely unused in this neighborhood. Space syntax is also a digital tool that can really help understand how is the network itself performing, just the road network as it is as an objective piece of infrastructure that we have. The second piece that we did is auditing of it. So what you're seeing here is actually geolocated points. So this was all on a live website where we looked at barriers, obstructions, road footpath quality, broken, missing, unsafe zones, facilitating infrastructure. So if there were shaded areas, where were those located? At junctions, we audited crossing signals for this whole network that we said is a priority network. And then we did a lot of experience survey. So the residents who actually came out to audit this information also audited what they felt like. So we had done an evening audit, we had done the daytime audit at peak time and non-peak time as well. So these were the data parameters. For cycling, in fact, we had a whole set of cyclists from the neighborhood that went around, cycled, ordered, marked all of this information, which was then digitized. We then converted this into an inhibitor and a facilitator sort of a map, where we said, okay, let's take all the inhibitors to walking and give them a scoring to say, okay, which roads actually inhibit walking at this moment because of all these issues that exist. And we also did facilitators. So which roads actually facilitate walking? So on this, for instance, in the middle map that you see, the ones that are green are already conducive to walking. So we know that those may need some level of cleaning and they're fine. But the red ones really require hard-hitting work to happen. Whereas on the right-hand side as well, you see where are the shaded paths. So it is the matching of all of this data that will help us arrive at the route. The other part that we did was assessing user demand. So this user demand, actually, the approach we took is we did a mapping of the key destinations used at the neighborhood scale. Because what are we trying to do? We are saying that I want to make first last mile connectivity and neighborhood trips to be in walking and cycling. So we went to these destinations and actually did a mapping of a survey with the people that were at these destinations and understood from them how do they come, what are the routes that they use, what mode do they use, if they use a motorized mode, where do they park, how far do they come from, if they use metro, which metro, if they use bus, which bus stop. So all of this kind of data was actually pulled up, and we got the existing walking cycling routes that we already use, as well as the potential users that can be converted. And in this, we have the categorization of neighborhood versus people coming from outside of the neighborhood. This again had three main things: the key destinations, the survey design that we went through, and the data analysis to understand the trend of what was happening. So what is the potential to change was what was interesting to us, saying that if you are within the kilometers of 1 and 2, why you still take not walking? right? So, or why you're not taking an alternate mode like cycling. As well as we found certain factors that were deterrent for walking, which is the perception of citizens with respect to that neighborhood. So how did we select the pilot route? So we took these inhibitors, we took the facilitators. So all of the audit data that was developed was taken, and we looked at the user demand assessment. With that whole thing together, we actually selected road by road and arrived at the pilot route that you had seen in the first image that I showed you, which was in blue. And I'll come back to that. So this is the route that finally got selected. So what you're seeing in red was what popped out. The next step for us was about the budgeting. Right. So what did we do? We mapped all the roads in the ward that were currently being budgeted. We developed this plan and we went to the MLA's office along with the municipality officials. What happened was when they saw the plan and they realized that actually, you know, a lot of the walking thing, there is already maybe 50% allocated. I have to channel 50% more to get this done. Literally in both the neighborhoods, what has happened is the local level officers itself have channelized money into making these walkable. And that has happened so seamlessly, something that we thought will take so much more time to do, but it was much easier and simpler to do that at the local level with the local officers, as opposed to moving at even at a higher city level, which may have taken a lot more time. So that was something that happened really easily. And then the additional thing, what has happened in these two neighborhoods is we managed to channel a lot of private funding. So there are wall paintings that have been done. We've managed to get in now signage systems along this, which are getting funded by another government agency. So because there is a proposal, the base infrastructure is already ready, all of which the planning process and this work of channelizing funds took all of 4 to 5 months to actually get the whole piece in place. And then from there, the additional improvement, beautification is what now we are concentrating on. So we have engaged over 4,500 citizens. There are over 250 issues that were mapped, and each of these issues also started getting pulled out. So we went with the BBMP official and the Westcom official, which is the electricity department, to see all the streetlights that are not working. That got fixed with separate set of officials with citizens, and not only us going down and taking this data. Similarly, for parking management, we are now putting a parking plan together in the neighborhood to actually work with this, which we're doing with the traffic police. So all of this has been possible because now data has been available, issues are there, which are mapped by a georeference point. We had several professionals who got involved at the neighborhood scale. A lot of them were from the neighborhood. So we really added to the capacity that was there at the local level to start engaging. Over 60 crores of public funds were unlocked in just these two neighborhoods for only the pilot network, which means that it is very much possible to move that money through. So around 12 plus partner organizations. So we do have government organizations, we have community organizations, we have technical, we have campaigning organizations, we ourselves are technical organizations as well. So all of us together have actually made this happen. So it is also a growing network that's happening as we are starting to implement projects. Finally, we have actually developed certain toolkits. So this process that you see has actually been documented in the form of the toolkit which we are currently preparing, and hopefully we'll be able to share out soon as well. So we have a lot, both the project websites, that the Walkable Malleshwaram and the Complete Streets Turnakundi website are live and up. We have used that website as a way to keep sharing our process. So everything that you see there in the planning, the data that you see will be available. The process we followed is available. What did we finally get as an output is available. So feel free to go and see that, see what it is. Happy to take any sort of communication at a later stage to say what can be done, how do we digitize it, what tools we can use. Happy to also discuss that. But all of this is very possible at the local level to do it in a much faster manner. So the imagination that I would like to leave us with is, at a city level, whatever is done, there is a need to understand what you can unlock and make happen at the local level. And if you do that, this problem is actually not that difficult to solve. So a master plan is very important, but to start implementing and mobilizing a master plan is even more important. So these kind of initiatives that are there, we have data available and we say that, okay, issues need to be monitored at a much more local level. It cannot happen at a larger city level. These are the things that need to be enabled, and citizen groups, young professionals need to be encouraged to come in and participate towards taking on their own neighborhoods. And I think then we can see a far wider reach and a much faster implementation scale that can happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sobia. Especially I like the last line where you said it is a faster process and it's so faster to move things around in local area. And I really like that spirit, because that is what we want to see, that we transforming our cities as quickly as possible and not taking another century to do that. So this was quite inspiring and well summed up, I would say. So moving on to question and answers. I think both the presentations gave some very good insights at different scales. I would first like to go to Prasanna Desai. Sir, you spoke about so Pune has a comprehensive mobility plan which was made in 2008, and Pune bicycle plan came into picture in 2018. Just wanting to understand whether this plan sort of is integrated with comprehensive mobility plan, and what is it so different or so special about bicycle plan that is not covered in comprehensive mobility plan that cities must consider. So over to you.
So comprehensive mobility plan is a very broad policy level. It doesn't work on the nitty-gritties at all. It says that walkability should be given importance, cycle should be there, bus should be there, and all other things. So it is basically listing down a broad-based thing, whereas cycle plan is very, very specific. It talks about each and every street. It talks about the left-hand side, right-hand side, and it talks about which should have dedicated, which should be painted, which should have calming measures. So the status of this, and this was passed by the general body. What is very important and critical is that it was passed by the GP and sent to the state government, and it was endorsed by the state government. It came back and it is supposed to be integrated with the development plan. It is to be superimposed on the development plan, but that has not happened so far. It has not got superimposed onto the development plan. Once it gets superimposed onto the development plan, then it becomes mandatory. It becomes a legal document that this street has to have a dedicated cycle track, or this street will have calming measure, or so that is yet to happen, and we hope that this will happen soon. The only other thing I would like to also add here is that the journey of cycle plan doesn't start on 2018 or 16. It is 30 years ago, 30. It's 3 decades. So that is to be really noted down. The people who are at who have been spearheading that, and they should be named, because we are talking about Sujit Patwardhan, Sujit Patwardhan, Ranjit Gadgil, Pranjali later on, Pranjali Deshpande, then all these people who have been talking about walkability. So there are so many people who have been in this movement. Jugal Rathi, they have been in this movement of 30 years, and that's why it has reached. And so वो पेड़ लगाया था, उसमें से अब फल आने शुरू हुए हैं, एटलीस्ट साइकिल प्लान बना है. And yes, other cities are making an excellent beginning, and I'm sure, but one will have to be patient by the time it reaches there. Maybe it should be faster because some benchmarks are set.
Thank you, sir. And certainly Pune is setting up an example which is inspiring other cities. And I also like how you're trying to get a statutory power to the plan, so that no matter what happens going ahead, whatever proposal is there on streets, you ensure that walking and cycling is implemented irrespective of whatever comes. And that's a big takeaway for me. I'll move to Sobia. Sobia, you said that, so the city has more than thousands of neighborhoods. Now, as cities begin to start their journey and as they pick up neighborhoods, what are the factors that helped you to choose these 2 neighborhoods? So what would you say, where does the city should start? What are those factors that they must consider?
So we had actually selected the 2 neighborhoods based on obviously certain criteria of saying, is there an active community? So we wanted to take one that was a core inner city neighborhood. So Malleshwaram is got the block and the grid system, and very highly, already very walkable, but it really missed the infrastructure for walking terribly. Whereas we took Dodnokundi, which is an outer neighborhood, and that is actually highly not planned development at all. It was largely gated communities, IT campuses, and we knew walking, when we did an analysis of the road network there, we knew walking may not be more as suitable as maybe cycling, because your trips are within that distance, to be able to cycle much easier. Plus you had a lot of in-migration that was there, so a lot of tech companies that are there as well. So we in fact used Malleshwaram to say that let's look at Malleshwaram because it is going to be a neighborhood that's going to be conducive to walking, and Dodnokundi because it is going to be far more conducive to cycling. And I mean, I'm sure some of you all have seen the cycle counter that's come up recently as well in Dodnokundi, which has been shared on the groups as well. The reason we put up that cycle counter as a thing was to prove the numbers, because actually, in Dodnokundi, we had a lot of maids, security guards, all the utilitarian cyclists who actually use cycles in large numbers, which does not exist in the core of the city. This still exists at the outside of the city because it's a much cheaper mode and distances are that much that you sort of can opt for a cycle instead of walk. So I think these two, in the nature of the neighborhoods itself was actually quite interesting to be able to decide what could work where. But I think if a city had its modal share done as a survey, and we had that survey available, you already can start identifying patterns and trends where you should start first, or which neighborhood should actually be started first. So that is one way. The other way is also to look at the network itself, right? How easy is it to walk looking at the network and looking at the radius that is there, especially in a city that is unplanned, right? A planned city still is predictable. You know it follows certain norms, but an unplanned city does not follow because a lot of it is privatized land that exists. So these are the kinds of factors that we looked at first. And of course, for us, it was very important to integrate our projects at with the community. So Bangalore, as you know, we have around 3,500 active resident associations that are there. So we also selected basis certain parameters of how many neighborhoods were active and who can actually be equal partners into this process or this experiment. But as a scaling thing, I think it's very possible to do certain level of analysis and even to understand trip patterns that are there across the city, to even indicate where should I push for walking, where should I push for cycling, as things where modes are the way people are already using and what intuitively they have opted for as a mode.
Sure. Yeah, I think the big takeaway from your answer for me is at least to look at the urban characteristic of these different localities that you chose based on. Also very important thing, how having these interventions would benefit the citizens over there, because often we do interventions but there's no one to use because it's far away somewhere from the city. So I think its usability is also very important. And
in fact, one of the other things was exactly that, because Bangalore already started doing outer cycling on outer ring road. So our thing was like, you need a feeder. Outer ring road is just one road passing through that neighborhood, but it was really not connecting anywhere. So hence, let's see whether that network plan connects into a larger city plan. So I think all of these will definitely add to helping select neighborhoods to start off with.
Sure. And I think the last point I would like to add, most importantly, there was already some support from the community, which has a good opportunity for you to scale up. So in some sense, it is not a very difficult ground to play, but something which is already a bit easier, relatively easier to work on. Thank you, Sovia. I'd like to pick up a question from the audience, and this is regarding funding. And this is where the critical question always comes into play. And Sovia, this is somewhere you touched upon in your presentation too, but this is for both of you. How did you plan for the funding? Were there any innovative sources of funding for creation of the network plan? Because at the end of the day, all of us are interested in its implementation. Implementation also not that we take 100 years, but something which is quick. So out of your experience, what has been the various sources of fundings that has helped to push the things ahead? So I'll again go first to Prasanna sir, followed by Sovia. Sir, you're on mute.
Funding has to come from the system, but Sophia did mention about some participation or unlocking some funds from the system itself. So there is I don't see funding is a problem. It's a question of setting the priority right, that where do you want to give that funding. and that can be done. The other thing which we are always talking about, that you always have, there is this something called as the road department. I don't know about other cities, but every city has a road department. So you have funding available for concretization of the road, tarring of the road, leaving the sewer line, water supply line, electrical line. So if they start believing that cycle or walkability is also equally important, why don't reserve 25% or 20% of the total tender for the edge or the NMT? That is what we had given as a suggestion. Any tender that you float, 25% should be spent on the edge, and the rest is all your services. So this kind of a division could be done, and then it would happen, because the priority needs to change. Rest of the sources, I think, obviously smaller cities may not have that kind of a budget, but larger cities have huge budgets. And if you have budgets available to construct so many flyovers, then obviously I think it doesn't cost much at all.
Thank you, sir.
It's just reorganizing the funding, reorganizing the.
Exactly. I think that's the key. Reorganizing the funding is what it is. Because here as well, like when we also went ahead and actually to the MLA's office and obviously the municipality, the local officials here, they have budgets. It's just that the budgets are randomly placed. They don't have a way to organize it the right way. But if you're going to go with a plan and say, okay, let's do it here, this is how it's going to be impactful, they are more than ready to channel that. I mean, we went and we realized that there are actually parking and no parking signboards that are lying around 38 to 40 of them that have been lying. They didn't know where to put it. Now we've done parking plans, so now they know acha, we'll use that. Additional can get funded for other things. Similarly, the same thing has come in Durnogundi, where we have said that we've got the funding under DALT around 50 lakhs that's come to add-on initiatives. So we said we'll demonstrate around 1.5 kilometers. The rest of the 10 kilometers actually BBMP is taking up, and they're making new proposals for these add-on elements. So it's very much possible. I also think one other inhibitor has been the fact that there are a lot of new materials that are getting used in these kinds of projects. So that has been an inhibitor, that they don't know how to cost it. So we have actually supported them in that, in getting parallel quotations from vendors that are there. Who are the vendors that are there? Even that is not known, right? Because it's still sort of evolving, that whole ecosystem is evolving. So I think all of these aspects definitely allow them or gives them the confidence that yes, I can fund this, because either it's already done as a pilot in the city, which is the first step. So you do a demonstratable network with all the elements, you figure out what is the costing, because it will not be in your SR rates that are there, or the standard rates that are there. So that really helps as well.
Sure. So yeah, I think the two things, as you rightly put, first is the priority. If you have the priority rightly set, there is no reason for you to not spend on it. And I think it's about having that right priority. And second, as you said, so yeah, there are funds available. It is about us giving that right direction and to the city on how to use it, spend it, and also work, as you have already worked with the citizens, with the communities. I think there's a potential of, it's basically finding ways to use that untapped potential money that's already there. So I think funding is not really an issue, but it's about the priority, and the way to use it is what it matters. There's so many questions actually coming in, and would love to take that, but because we are falling short of time, we'll have to move further to the next session. And with this, I really thank Prasanna Desai and Sobia, who have shared quite good insights from both Bangalore and Pune. And I'm sure there's so many things that our audiences have to learn from it. And thank you for sharing the resources. And once, it will be a good chance for the cities to also look at those resources, and happy to connect further with the cities on if many questions they have. Thank you so much, Prasanna sir and Sobia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Over to you, Savita.
Yes, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Prasanna sir and Shobhya ma'am. I'm sure your discussion and all your insights would have left all the cities who joined us here today very inspired. And thank you, Paran, for moderating the entire discussion. Next, I'd like to invite Smritika Srinivasan, Associate Urban Development at ITDP India, to walk us through the process of developing the walking and cycling network plan and other goals that cities can work towards. We are also joined by Aishwarya Soni, Deputy Manager, Strategic and Visual Communications from ITDP India, to talk about the upcoming World Bicycle Day and what initiatives your city can take up. Over to you, Smritika and Aishwarya.
Thank you, Suvita. So let's jump right into the technical presentation. So the technical presentation is going to give you the steps towards taking up action and to scale up your interventions itself. So let's move on to the next slide. Here are the 2023 goals that you're familiar with. Cities will be working towards these goals. Some of them have already started working on these, and you'll be working towards these goals as part of the challenges, which will cover the pillars of action, foundation, and communication. And in this workshop, we will cover 5 milestones, which is highlighted in this next section. So let's just jump right in. Before we get into the detailed part of the presentation, we want to start off with a quick poll. I'd request Angi to launch the poll on Zoom, and you can select the option that best fits your city. Angi, could you launch the poll, please? So here we have 2 questions. One is, does your city presently have ongoing street design projects? You can answer yes or no. And the second question is, does your city presently have a city level or a neighborhood level walking and cycling network plan? We will close the poll in a minute. So go ahead and drop in your answers if you haven't already. I think we can close the poll. Okay, great. So here's what all of our audience have told today. So most of the cities have answered that they do have street design projects going on, and most of the cities have responded, just over half the cities have responded that they don't currently have the walking and cycling network. So now we can move back onto the presentation itself. So what we understand from this poll is also that while many cities have active street design projects, very few of them have network plans, or even the ones that have the network plan, there are many ways in which we can strengthen the plan, just like how we heard from the knowledge sharing session itself. So let's begin with the foundational piece on the goal of creating a walking and cycling action plan. So the first step here is to understand the components, which you all are aware of. The action plan is the long-term roadmap to help implement healthy streets interventions. And in this workshop, let's just take a closer look at the key component of it, which is the network plan. So let's understand what a walking and cycling network plan really is. I think we've covered it pretty well in our knowledge sharing session, but just to give you a little more insights, the network plan is a dense street network plan that identifies walking and cycling routes. Now, on these routes, the network plan will also inform the type of permanent walking and cycling friendly interventions. By doing the network plan, you can ensure that the city is seamlessly connected and the walking routes are very continuous across the city. The network plan, essentially, even like what we heard from our panelists, can be worked at 2 scales, which we'll cover a little more in the further sections. Next is to understand why your city even needs a walking and cycling network plan. First, it helps identify the quantum of walking and cycling infrastructure your city can have. This will then help put together a street inventory that will help estimate abstract budgets for implementations. Now, when you have these abstract budgets and the plan for the entire city, you can actually build the support for these street design projects and allocate proper budgets with your city leaders. Now that you have the plan for the physical infrastructure, the case can also be built to strengthen some of the institutional pieces to ensure resilience, such as the adoption of policies, setting up design cells and departments, and so on. So the network plan will help plan and design the infrastructure in addition to all of these points covered. So let's get started with how you can develop the walking and cycling network plan itself. The first step is to map the baseline information. This is done to ensure that the existing and proposed patterns in your city can be factored into your network planning process, which is more for the future. The data will be collected through surveys, reports, and so on. So we've given a detailed list of elements that you can consider to map the baseline information, which will be provided in the guide. And additionally, you can take up more layers or data to further strengthen this baseline information. The next step is to map the street hierarchy, which is arterial, collector, and local streets across the entire city. Knowing and mapping the streets hierarchy will help you be aware of the street characteristics, speed, and usage, which in turn will support your decisions for planning suitable walking and cycling infrastructure. We'll come to that in a bit, but moving on to the next step. Mapping the network at the city level. Once you have the street hierarchy map, we will identify which of these streets can come together to form your city level network plan. This step is essentially to help pick out the key streets on which having walking and cycling infrastructure will be most beneficial for the city residents. You can further add more layers as you map the city level network. Like we've mentioned, the detail will be provided in the guide, so don't worry about that. Now, let's zoom in a little bit and see how a neighborhood level network can be mapped. Within a neighborhood, we must ensure that all the streets are factored into the network, since our overall aim is to ensure that entire neighborhoods are safe for walking and cycling. So that's why you see all the streets within this neighborhood being considered for the neighborhood level network plan. Now, be sure to also consider linkages and other connections through private properties across natural features to ensure that walking and cycling distance is shorter for the citizens and hence more comfortable. As mentioned, the goal is to ensure that our neighborhoods are made safe for walking and cycling. But to start off with, you can prioritize a few neighborhoods or even wards as you begin developing your neighborhood level network plans. Incrementally add more neighborhoods to ensure all neighborhoods in the city are made safe for walking and cycling. Now that you have the network plan, let's look at how you can use it to identify interventions and make it more robust. Let's understand what walking and cycling interventions can look like. The three primary types identified are segregated footpaths, segregated cycle tracks, and traffic calm streets, which you all are mostly aware of. You'll be assigning these interventions to your network based on the speed of the streets, as mentioned in the slide, which will also be covered in the guide. So moving on, there are other types of infrastructure which are identified, which is the walk and cycle only streets, walk, cycle, and public transport only streets, and cycle highways. These interventions will now be assigned to your network depending on the characteristics of the streets, which again, more information will be provided in the guide. Remember that a good network is the one that considers intersections, bridges, and other linkages and mid-block crossings as well. So be sure to integrate these in your network plan as well as the detailed designs. All of these steps and where you can implement these is covered in the guide, so you can follow that once we share it offline. The next step, now that you know the types of interventions, begin assigning them to different streets based on the street speed and characteristics. For example, we mentioned on the slide that streets with street speeds over 15 kilometers per hour will have dedicated and segregated footpaths. If streets are above 30 kilometers per hour, they will include a dedicated and segregated cycle track in addition to the footpath. And in places where pedestrians and motorists will have to share the same street, make sure that the streets are traffic calm to ensure that the street speed is below 15 kilometers per hour. Remember that cities can make this network plan grow and add additional streets to this plan in the future. And this now finally, with all the integrations, which the types that we've spoken of earlier, will result in your city level and neighborhood level walking and cycling network plan. The next step is to then create a simple street inventory using the information identified for the network plan. A sample table is provided here and will be provided in the guide we share also. So developing the network plan with this street inventory will help in understanding how you can phase out your implementation plan, packaging it for the consultants and contractors, and also help prepare budget estimates. So more steps on all of this will be shared after the workshop. The last step is something that you are all familiar with. So remember to get feedback on the network plan from various stakeholders and the community and revise it based on that feedback. Also remember that what we've walked through here is a simple bare minimum process for developing a network plan. Cities could strengthen them with more data and additional layers. So reach out to the ITDP team for discussions and reviews on the network plan itself. Now, we'll move on to the actions piece. So in this section, we'll take a closer look at how you can implement the permanent interventions in your city and how the network plan can assist in this process. In the previous workshop, we highlighted the infrastructure goals for our cities by 2023. Use the network plan to help identify these streets and start the process towards implementing them. We've set a goal of 50 kilometers, but you can aim higher and achieve more. Let's look at how you can go about implementing these interventions. This is a process that you all are very familiar with. First, you finalize your sites, then you prepare the detailed design, test the design, capture learnings, and then make it permanent. And remember to engage with the community throughout the process. Let's take a closer look at how you can finalize your sites. So in the finalize your sites, you have two approaches. One is leveraging the existing projects or making the stage 1 pilots permanent. And the second is taking up new sites for transformation. Understanding what the leverage existing projects and stage 1 pilots are. So many of you have gotten back to us telling that you have multiple street design projects underway. And what we would like to do is we would request you to take up some of these existing projects and make sure that you can embed these healthy streets principles into them so that we can maximize the impact. And also, many of you all have already started on the process of making your stage 1 pilot permanent, but for those who haven't, apply your learnings from the pilot and then ensure that the permanent transformation happens. And also some things to remember is that any street design project that allows for design changes and additions can be factored into this, or any project that doesn't currently have safe walking and cycling infrastructure and will benefit from it can also be identified under this. The other approach that we're suggesting is for you to take up new sites for transformation. Like we mentioned earlier, in January, many cities have signed the Freedom to Walk and Cycle pledge and have committed to large infrastructure transformation on ground. So go back to your pledge and see whether you can aim higher or even go beyond the challenge goals to take up your sites for transformation. And throughout this whole process, since you're aware of how to develop the network plan will help identify which streets you can consider towards getting this on-ground transformation itself. Over to Aishwarya to talk about the communications vertical.
Thanks a lot, Spritika. Bala, if you could go to the next slide. Now, we all know that the month of June is a gala festival for the cycling world. For 3rd June is celebrated as the World Cycling Day. And this is something that we at India Cycles for Change and Streets4People eagerly look forward to. So go ahead, mark your calendars, and let's go big this year on World Cycle Day. Last year, we saw cities across India hosting cycle rallies and launching online campaigns. And it was amazing to see the cycling momentum that cities had created both on ground as well as on social media. And this year, we have planned initiatives under 3 verticals. Under the action pillar, we want cities to implement 30 kmph or slow streets. Under the foundation pillar, we want cities to adopt the healthy streets policy. And under the communications pillar, we want cities to institutionalize open street campaigns and host cycle rallies. Next slide. Now, we all know how fatal high speeds can be. And here's a graphic that illustrates how speeds play a big role in controlling the severity or fatality of the injury. There's nearly 90 to 35% chances of death when a vehicle at 60 kmph crashes with a pedestrian or cyclist. It only reduces slightly when speeds go down to 50 kmph. But when speeds reduce to 30 kmph, the chances of fatal incidents to occur reduce drastically to 10%, and pedestrians and cyclists are only slightly or seriously injured. Hence, on streets where motor vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists coexist, a maximum of 30 kmph is the ideal. So, activity number 1. For World Bicycle Day, we want you to identify 3 neighborhood or local streets, ideally not bus routes, and work towards transforming them into permanent 30 kmph streets. Use speed bumps, speed cushions, speed tables, and chicanes to slow down the street. We know that this would need some time, permissions and approvals, implementation, testing, and hence we'd like you to begin work now, a month in advance. So you have your permanent 30 kmph streets ready by the 3rd of June. And thereafter, assess how the behavior of motor vehicles users adjusts to the new street. Use the test, learn, scale mantra. Test on these streets, learn from the impact it has, and then scale across the city. We will be sharing a guide with detailed steps on how you can go about creating these streets. Next. Number 2, adopting the healthy streets policy. And a number of cities have committed to adopting the healthy streets policy during the Freedom to Walk and Cycle Challenge. And now we want you to embed it and adopt it. Embedding policies into the system go a long, long way in ensuring that our streets transformations continue. And we'd like all of you to roll out the policy for public consultation and adopt them on 3rd June. Celebrate the policy adoption event at the inauguration of your 30 kmph street. Again, we'll be sharing a template for you that you can contextualize into a healthy street policy for your city. Next. Number 3, we want you all to institutionalize open street in your cities and make them a year-long campaign. Lots of cities across the world have made open streets a regular thing, and citizens look forward to these events. Closer home, cities like Mumbai and Gurugram have been hosting open streets very frequently, closing the street for traffic and opening them up for life, and making the streets come alive with a range of activities. Bring all the responsible stakeholders together, allocate the budget, and plan regular open streets across the city. Roll out the first open street of the series on the week of 3rd June. In the next 2 weeks, we have an exclusive session with eminent speakers just about institutionalizing open streets. So do stay tuned, where we go deep dive and learn from other cities how they've successfully launched open streets and kept them going for a long time now. Number 4, and the last one here, host cycle rallies, especially for women and children. We all know that there's power and strength in numbers, and when there are more women cyclists on the streets, other women feel empowered to cycle too. I went for my first cycling rally on Sunday, and it felt so refreshing to be cycling alongside other cyclists for a change, and not with motor vehicles just going past me so nearby, and me finding and maneuvering my way along the edge of the street. And women often feel unsafe on our city streets, and you can leverage World Bicycle Day to change that. Conduct rallies where women feel enabled and empowered to cycle. And with that, I include the exciting plans that we have in store for you for World Bicycle Day. Again, we will be sharing a guide with you so that you can successfully roll out all of these initiatives. We look forward to celebrating World Bicycle Day like a nationwide festival with all of you. Thanks a lot, Smritika, and back to you.
Thank you, Soni. We're really excited for the World Bicycle Day to shape up. So also, cities, to remind you that these are some of the goals towards which the collaterals have already been shared. So if you've not commenced on it, we strongly urge you to get started on these goals. in this workshop, after this workshop, cities will be working on developing the walking and cycling network plan, setting up the Healthy Streets Department in cell, adopting the Healthy Streets policy, setting up the Healthy Streets Apex Committee, finalizing the sites, developing detailed design, and taking up the World Bicycle Day initiatives. ITDP will then share the guidance for all of these documents itself. Bala, we can move on. Yeah. And with that, we also know that cities have started sharing data with us towards an exciting leaderboard. And we have been putting this information together in the back end. We still have information required from some of the cities. So if you haven't done this, please do it at the earliest. And we'll be happy to share this portal with you shortly. So now it's time for the most exciting segment. It's the Healthy Streets quiz. So please keep your phone ready to answer the quiz. You can scan the QR code that will be displayed on the screen, and alternatively, we will be putting in the code, the link to the quiz in the chat box, and the screen will display the code to the link itself, and you can add in the code into the link and get ready to answer the Healthy Streets quiz. So scan the QR code on the left or join in at slido.com and enter 268435. Saying that once again, join in at slido.com and enter the code 268435. Okay, we have a couple more people joining in now. The code is 268435. The link has been shared in the chat box, and we have the QR code on the left side of your screen. So scan it if you have a QR code scanner on your phone. If not, join in through the slido.com website. This is amazing. We're seeing a lot of participants join in the quiz. We will close the quiz in just a minute. So if you haven't got on to Slido, do that quickly. It's very exciting to see the number of participants joining in here. Okay, closing the poll in 3, 2, and 1. I think, Bala, you can move on to the question now. Okay, so the first question here is, what is the first step to creating a network plan? Is it map your baseline information, identify street hierarchy, or identify and assign the type of interventions? Go ahead and tap into what you think is the right answer, and we'll display the answer and the solution shortly. I hope you are all done with the first question. Bala, can we take a look at the answers? Okay, most of you all have responded saying the first step is to map your baseline information. Let's look at what the right answer is. And that's right, it is map your baseline information. We've covered it in today's workshop. We'll also give you guidance on what layers you can consider to start building up this baseline information itself. Great work, everyone. Moving on to the next question. The network plan will become part of your city's Healthy Streets policy, 3-year action plan, or institutionalizing campaigns. So go ahead and type in your answer. And we'll close this question in 3, 2, and 1. Bala, you can show us the answers. Okay, so 63% of you all have mentioned it's part of the 3-year action plan, and 37% of you have mentioned the Healthy Streets policy. Let's take a look at what the right answer is. It's the 3-year action plan. So the 3-year action plan is something that will help provide a roadmap towards how you can implement interventions on the ground, and the network plan will be a step in the action plan itself that will help you implement these interventions. So great work, everyone. Moving on to the very last question. What are cycling friendly interventions? Is it dedicated cycle tracks, safe intersection, traffic calm streets, or all of the above? Select the answer that you think best suits this question. And we can close the question in 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. Everyone has told all of the above. We have a unanimous, and yeah, that's the right answer. So like we mentioned in the presentation, it includes all three. And it extends even beyond this, which you will know a little more in the guide. So thank you everyone for being part of this, question and answer session. We plan to have a little more exciting and more engaging tools in the upcoming workshops. So please do attend these workshops, and let's hope that we can learn together in a very fun manner. So thank you everyone, and over to you, Suri.
Thanks a lot, Aishwarya and Smritika. I personally am very excited for June to see all the work cities are going to put on display for World Bicycle Day. And I hope all of the audience enjoyed our new feature, the Pop Quiz. And like Smritika said, we're hoping to make it more engaging, and I hope you like that. We do have some questions from the audience. I request Parin to join Smritika and Aishwarya to answer these questions. So we'll start with the first one. This question goes, how did you build support with the city leaders and politicians for the research of the policy?
So if I may actually direct this question to Prasanna Desai. Sir, if you're available, would you like to take that up?
Yeah, can you come back on the question?
Sure. Suvita, over to you.
So the questions are asked that how did you build support with the city leaders and politicians for researching the policy?
It doesn't happen overnight, to be very honest. I think it has to happen very slowly and steadily, and we didn't build it up, to be very honest. I think it was built up by many people over a period of years that I talked about. And it was there, and every politician obviously is not on board. But I think the simple question is that if his neighborhood is safe and healthy, then they are in for it. So you have to build it up ward by ward. It is not one politician who is taking care of the full city. I think it has to be built up ward by ward, and the consensus needs to be developed. It's a long process. It's not a, all this is a long process, to be very honest, I must tell you. It is not a, that it will happen overnight. And one has to be patient, and it cannot be, it takes time. There's no magic wand that the politicians will agree to it.
Sure.
Sure, sir. Do the three of you have anything to add?
I completely agree with sir. And in fact, I think it is certainly a continuous process. It doesn't happen just once. And also out of my experience, having one-on-one conversations with them, trying to also give them the space to ask questions, to understand what is it that is in their mind. Also often what public thinks matters a lot. So sometimes also gathering relevant data from how citizens feel, presenting to them also makes a difference, because the opinions of citizens matters to them. And in fact, just quoting an example of how citizens, some of the cities during the stage 1 of Cycles for Change actually used cycle rallies open streets event, where they invited political leaders to be part of it. And that is when they were able to experience, see what the crowd's energy is. So I think this kind of tactics also helped build certain support for these initiatives. Not that it was achieved at one such event, but as sir mentioned, it has to be something which is done regularly on a regular basis.
Now, if I may add there, I think walking and cycling, though is part of NMT, I think these two issues are a bit separate. Walking is day to day. So there is no question over there. There is no question. Everybody has to walk. that is, means if you park anywhere also, you have to walk. So the 80-year-old and the 80-year-old, the grandfather, grandmother, everybody has to walk. So the question is not there to justify walking, safe walking anywhere. I don't see any need to justify that we need safe walking. Walking has to be safe, and everybody is walking, whether you are coming in a Mercedes Benz or you are coming on a two-wheeler. The cycling has a different game, which has landed now today into, is that it is a what you call chicken and hen situation. They say, where are the cyclists? Why do you need cycle tracks? You don't need them because there is no cyclists. So until unless you provide safe cycling, people will not cycle. So I think this is very, very difficult. That happens. The other thing also I feel is there are two kind of cycle challenges. One is inviting people to cycle, have these cycle challenges and everything. But the main aim when we did also the cycle plan, one was looking for the captive cyclists. The captive cyclist who goes for the place of work. If we want this whole scenario to turn around and the work trips to be converted, if at all, or reduced from taking out my two-wheeler every time I go to the market, taking out my car every time I go to a restaurant, and then looking for parking, then we have to have that kind of a network. And there are people who are the captive cyclists. My famous question is always for a 16-year-old or all of us, how many of cycle to the school and whether we will send our children on a bicycle to the school? Nobody says yes for the child at all because it is not safe. And that is the number of trips which are getting completely converted. So every parent is dropping the kid. So there are so many cars in the morning at 8 o'clock which are moving to maybe X school and Y school and creating a congestion. Though there are school buses, that's another layer. So I think one needs to look at the captive cyclists who can get converted. And then there is obviously recreational cycling. And people have moved on to recreational cycling. But you ask them to go to office on a bicycle or workplace, there is a big question there.
Sure, sir. Aishwarya or Smritika, can we move on to the next question?
Sure, sir.
All right. Our next question is from Kalyan Dombivelli. How can we develop walking and cycling infrastructure in streets that are not wide enough to accommodate both?
Sure, I can answer that. So we do understand that most of our Indian streets may not have sufficient width to accommodate both walking and cycling. So in streets such as these, we've also provided detailed design guidelines that will help you figure out what interventions can go in which street. But what you can consider is making sure that these streets are traffic calmed so that walking and cycling can happen. But try depending on the street width and the street speed. For example, we've mentioned that if it's under 15 kilometers per hour, make sure that you at least get in the segregated footpath. And in streets above 30 kilometers, you can get in a cycle lane. In places that don't have both, you can have the traffic calming elements, and also the piece that we've shared on World Bicycle Day, where you're ensuring that your streets are traffic calm to 30 kilometers per hour, is also trying to ensure this, where you can have safe walking and cycling infrastructure in places that cannot accommodate it. And you can always try a combination and see what works best for your city, and you can try that out. Parin, would you like to add anything?
Actually, Sobhya can also add to this, because in Malleshwaram, if I remember, there are quite narrow streets. So how this has happened, Sobhya can throw light on that as well.
As in the space allocation, sorry, I just stepped out anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had this issue both in Dodnakundi and Malleshwaram actually, because a lot of the interior roads, you don't have enough space. What we did is for cycling, it's actually much easier because you know the width and you sort of, negotiate with that width and you go ahead. In Malleshwaram, what has happened is we are trying to do a minimum of 1.8 throughout. because your roads are very narrow. But we are also trying to see if we can put in some traffic calming measures. So there are certain junctions we are dealing with more effectively, crossings that we're dealing with more effectively, because you're not able to entirely, work with the footpath. Parking is another thing that we are really looking at in a very comprehensive manner. So these conservancy lanes also that are there in Malleshwaram, because there are open lanes that are there, a lot of people actually end up parking there. So we have actually made walk only lanes and bollarded those lanes to ensure no traffic flows through them or no parking is happening in them. Whereas some other ones that are closer to commercial areas, we have ensured that there is only one side parking, which leaves a good 2 meters for walking at least. So I think it's a negotiation on site majorly that has happened for us, both with officials as well as the users of that space itself. Where there are a lot of residences, we ensure residential parking is really organized in a certain manner. Where it's commercial, of course, you look at ways to stop it. And now in Malleshwaram, we are also looking at how to improve the connectivity from the metro, like a circuit bus from metro to the bus stops that are there. So more people opt to take that because the junction that is crossing for the metro is really bad. So junction design has for us become a very critical thing to enable walking also to happen. And of course, certain traffic calming measures and management street by street has been a way that we have looked at.
Sure. Do the rest of you would like to add anything else to that question?
Nothing from me. They have covered it well.
Sure. The next question.
Can I come in for this? See,
Yes.
Kalyan team members have asked very specific. I think it has to go with the actual factuals. If you have 12-meter road, then what do? You need two-way, 3-meter, 3-meter. You are left with 3-meter at both the edges. Now you are left with 3-meter both the edges as a footpath, which will have again electrical box and number of things. So you are left with 2-meter. So here in 12 meters, there is nothing else possible. See, we always say कि कपड़ा इतना है तो उस कपड़े में क्या सिलोगे आप? तो 6 मीटर बीच में रह गया. 6 meter is calm. Automatically it is calming, and the cyclist will also go in this 6 meter. You have a 15 meter, then what do? First of all, whether traffic police and the city will agree for a 3-meter lane, they are still talking about 3.5 meter wide lane. So when you have 15 meters, I don't know in Malleshwaram what are the ROWs. So 15 meters, again you have 6, then you have 4.5 left on both sides. Now do you want to carve out 2-meter parking and 2.5 footpath? Maybe yes, but the parking then has to be paid parking. If it is free parking, then it's all, the game is over. One side parking at times, depending upon land use, does not work. This P1, P2 has virtually failed because P1 is trouble somebody on the left hand side for half one day and trouble the other on the right hand side one day. So it doesn't work at all. And it doesn't optimize the utilization because you're blocking left and right and you cannot design accordingly. So unless I am saying there is a land use thing, if there is an institutional wall on somewhere and they are not property where you are entering, then it is. So very, very local situation. But yes, narrow streets, you cannot have a dedicated cycle track and you should remove parking. Then one should say absolute no to parking, that there is no parking available, but people will park. And then you have to make parking chargeable and heavy, a telescopic charge. First hour 10 rupees, second hour 20 rupees. So then this whole thing will change. Sorry for jumping in.
No worries, sir.
Very well, sir.
Sure, sir. The next question is a little specific. It talks about the 30-kilometer, and the question is, are the 30 kilometers per hour speed streets supposed to be implemented as part of a tactical urbanism interventions?
I can take that question. So when we discuss things like speed humps, speed tables, and speed cushions, these are permanent interventions. You will be making them using, on the surface of the road, and then you will have to test how motor vehicles react to it and improve on that accordingly. So this will not be TU interventions. These would be more like permanent interventions.
All right. So I think with that, we come to a close for our Q&A. Thank you so much, Parin, Smritika, and Aishwarya, and Sir, Prasanna, Sir, and Sobia. It was very nice of you to answer all of these doubts from all of our participants. With this, we have come to an end of our second online workshop for stage 2 for the India Cycles for Change Challenge and Streets for People Challenge. I'd like to invite Parin to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this session. I thank Prasanna sir and Sobia for their wonderful insights in the from Pune and Bangalore, and taking time to responding to the question answers from the cities. I thank the entire ITDP team for the wonderful presentation. And last but not the least, all the cities and everyone at YouTube listening to our session. Just final, I would like to sum up this entire conversation, today's conversation, in 3 big points. So firstly, we spoke about network planning today. I would like to tell network planning is just not about drawing lines on the plan. It is also about adopting right design and implementation guidelines. So if the footpaths have constant up and downs, pedestrians are not going to walk. If cycle tracks have constant in and out for the cyclist, they're not going to use it. So it's not only the plan, but also adopting right design and implementation guidelines is equally important. And cities like Pune and many others have adopted urban street design guidelines. That is quite essential. As Prasanna sir was saying, what happens when it is a 12-meter wide road, 15-meter wide road? And this is not just only about adopting, but also having constant capacity development of engineering staff, design team, contractors is equally important, so that we make them more aware of the design practice, especially towards the needs of pedestrians and cyclists. The second point I would like to touch upon is that as we work towards physical infrastructure, it's very equally important for us to regularly have citizen engagement, communications towards building support. And also these communications and citizen engagement is also towards negotiating the street space. And that is how we are able to achieve the designs that work for everyone. There is, of course, not that you can make everyone happy, but a design that works for majority of them, and especially which is in the interest of larger community, is something which happens only through a discussion with community. And both Bangalore and Pune have set examples where people were involved right from the start. And the third and the final point is about having a long vision for the city. So a citywide vision along with neighborhood plan is equally important, so that every citizen in any corner of the city is able to walk, cycle, move around in the city quite seamlessly. And as Prasanna sir said, it's everyone, right from an 8-year-old to 80-year-old individual in the city is able to walk seamlessly. And so keep building upon your network plan. So it is not just about a 3-year action plan, but this network plan is something which is going to grow over the years. 3 years is something which is a time frame which helps you to learn and then further scale it up into the next 3-year plans. So it is not something which is the end goal. It is something which you will keep on building up going ahead. So with this, thank you so much for the session today. So over to you.
Thank you, Parin. And with that, we bring the session to a close. Thank you to all of our attendees and our panelists. We hope today's session left you very inspired to continue or start work on your network plans. And we are really looking forward to seeing all the work you have you bring about for World Bicycle Day next month. We will soon share the video and presentation from today's session for your reference. Thank you, everyone.